Agri-Food. I'd like to just make a few comments to the benefit of our witnesses who are here today. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you're ready to speak, you can click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. Interpretation is available on the bottom of your screen. You can certainly toggle between French and English and your desired language of choice. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly for the benefit of our translators. When you're not speaking, your mic should be on mute. And if interpretation is lost, please just inform me immediately, and myself and the clerk and the team here will do our best to address the issue. With regard to a speaking list for the benefit of the members, the clerk will advise the chair on whose hands are up first on the best of her ability, and we'll do our best to maintain a consolidated speaking list in order accordingly. And pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on earlier this morning on Monday, January 31st, 2022, the committee will now proceed with the briefing on the status of the British Columbia flood recovery effort. I'd now like to take the opportunity to welcome our witnesses who are joining us today by video conference. And from the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food, I know we're still waiting on Mr. Del Bianco, but he is the Director General of Business Risk Management Directorate Programs Branch. Natalie Gore, who is the Director General of Regional Operations Directorate. Scott Pello, Executive Director, Planning, Coordination, and Disaster Assessment Division, Business Risk Management Programs Directorate, and Aaron Fowler, who is the Chief Agriculture Negotiator and Director General for the Trade Agreements and Negotiations. From Farm Credit Canada, we have Michael Hoffert, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer, Don Anderson, Senior Vice President, Western Operations. And let me just take a moment, Mr. Hoffert, to congratulate you. I know you're retiring in June of 2022, so congratulations for all your service, and thank you for being here with us today. And also from Public Safety Canada, who will not be providing any opening remarks but is available to members to take questions. Stephanie Durand, who is the Director General of Emergency Management and Policy Branch. Welcome, all of you. Thank you for being here for an important conversation here today. What I'm going to propose is that we actually start with our 5 minutes of opening remarks from Farm Credit Canada, which may allow Mr. Del Bianco to get in. We understand he was having some technical problems. So, Mr. Hoffert, if you're okay with that, I'd ask that you start with your 5 minutes, and then we will proceed to the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bonjour, merci.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide a briefing today.
To provide a briefing on the status of British BC's flood recovery efforts. I'm joined today by FCC Senior Vice President Don Anderson, who is responsible for our customer facing teams in BC and in Alberta. FCC is a self-sustaining federal account corporation that provides financing, software, and advisory services designed for the Canadian agriculture and food industry. We are Canada's leading agriculture and food lender with a loan portfolio of more than $44 billion. FCC serves all agriculture and food processing sectors, and we have more than 2,100 employees working out of our 101 offices across the country. In BC, FCC has a $2.9 billion in loans outstanding to primary producers and another $876 million to agribusiness and agri-food operators. Prior to the flooding in question, our team located in Abbotsford, Surrey, Kelowna, and Duncan were actively reaching out to our customers as many producers in BC were impacted by extreme heat and drought conditions during the 2021 growing season. In the days and weeks following the November devastating flooding and erosion in parts of BC's interior, Lower Mainland, and on Vancouver Island, FCC has worked with customers facing significant losses and financial hardship. Examples of losses include buildings, equipment, livestock, feed, and productive land for crops. The personal and business property damage has been extensive. For some, the cleanup and recovery may have impacted their operations for days or weeks. For others, the production disruption may be felt for months to come. And for others yet, such as in blueberry operations, the impact could last into years. It is safe to say that the circumstances will vary significantly and will not be fully understood for several months. The public infrastructure damage and impacts to the highways and rail transportation has been extensive as well. For local producers, it curtailed the ability to obtain supplies like feed to sustain their operations, materials to rebuild, and access to area processors. For food processors and logistics companies that move perishable food products to grocery stores across Canada, the supply chain disruption contributed to an already challenging situation. Upon hearing of the magnitude of the flooding in BC, FCC sought immediate approval from our board of directors to launch a customer support program that mirrored FCC's response to industry disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. More specifically, we offered loan payment deferrals that could include both principal and interest up to 6 months or interest only for a full year. To date, 28 customers on 53 loans representing $34.2 million have taken advantage of this offer. The volumes are concentrated in greenhouse, hay farming, and fruit, blueberry operations. Livestock loan deferrals to poultry operations are $3.8 million, and for dairy farms, loan deferrals total $2 million. Emergency credit lines of up to $500,000 are also available, and there has been some limited uptake so far on that offer. Recognizing the needs would stretch well beyond what FCC could do with financing, we also provided a $100,000 donation to the BC Agriculture Council, BCAC, to help relief efforts for the industry. BCAC is a nonprofit council of agriculture industry associations that advocates for the interests of the province's agriculture and food producers. All FCC customers in affected areas have been contacted and invited to reach out to us to discuss their individual situations and options. And although the early uptake on customer support may be limited to date, we will continue to work with our customers as they develop a better understanding of their financial impacts. Areas we continue to monitor and to assist in the continued recovery effort, we're keeping a close eye on the following. Impacts to livestock sectors, recovering feedstock and longer-term facility repair and rebuilds. Impacts to the crop sector, we're paying specific attention to blueberry and crop productivity and possible soil contamination as a result of the flooding. On impacts to the agribusiness and agri-food processors, monitoring lingering supply chain disruptions, and overall mental health of area producers and our FCC team, understanding the effects of the very stressful events of the past year. The early days of this disaster were marked by images of the community pulling together to protect livestock and take care of their neighbors. Now, as the more infrastructure heavy lifting begins, we continue to monitor the situation and look forward to more progress in the months ahead. In closing, FCC remains committed to support our customers and the broader BC agriculture value chain through these challenging times. Once again, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. Je vous remercie encore pour cette occasion.
I'd like to thank you once again for this opportunity.
Mr. Hofford, only a few seconds, and I gave you some extra time, but thank you for being within 5 minutes. We're going to go to, I understand Mr. Del Bianco is now on the line, so we'll head over to Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. If you're with us, Mr. Del Bianco. Okay. My understanding from the clerk is he may be having some sound issues. Mr. Pello or...
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear, I believe. Yep. Okay, over to you, Mr. Del Bianco, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to thank the committee for holding this special meeting on the impacts of the extreme weather event in British Columbia. As you know, the floods were significant, and dairy, poultry, swine, beef, horticulture, fruit, vegetable growers all incurred significant losses. Over 1,000 farms, 15,000 hectares, and 2.5 million livestock were impacted by the floods. I want to note that producers do have access to a suite of business risk management programs that will help them manage the significant risks that threaten the viability of their operations. These programs include, obviously, the Agri-Recovery Initiatives, Agri-Stability, Agri-Insurance, Agri-Invest, and these programs are cost-shared 60-40 between the federal government and the provinces. Last month, both Ministers Bibeau and Popham visited with some of the farmers and ranches in the region to see the full extent of the damage to the lands and livestock. And they essentially struck a federal provincial task team, which was quickly established to understand the full impacts of the event and how Agri-Recovery could respond to help producers with disaster recovery costs. I should note that we do, at AFC, have experience working with the provinces on agri-recovery initiatives, most recently having rapidly deployed programs totaling $825 million in response to the drought conditions across Western Canada and Northwestern Ontario. Today, as we consider the impacts of the significant floods, we know that the agriculture sector will face a number of challenges related to their productive assets, soil health, feed shortages, plant health, disease and contamination, as well as the impact of livestock losses. So I am joined with Scott Pello, who's the executive director that leads AFC's agri-recovery team. But by way of example, under the program, I thought I could share some of the extraordinary expenses that could be supported. These include the cleanup, repair, restoration of land, barns, and animal shelter, water, and waste systems, work to return flood-impacted land and buildings to a safe environment for agricultural production, repair of on-farm structures such as livestock containment fences and drainage ditches, and measures related to animal welfare. So the replacement of feed, as well as livestock transportation, veterinary care, and unfortunately, mortality disposal. In addition, federal and provincial officials are working with Public Safety Canada to better understand how Agri-Recovery Initiative could best complement the support that will be provided through the Disaster Financial Assistance Arrangements, or known as DFAA. So I want to note that I'm also joined by my colleague, Stéphanie Durand, who's the Director General for Emergency Management at the Policy Branch at Public Safety Canada, that can also respond to some of your questions. So as noted earlier, producers also have access to other business risk management programs. So we've encouraged producers to sign up for Agri-Stability, which can help farmers cover the severe drops in their income. And initial payments through interim payments can be made available in a matter of weeks. And we've also put in place what we refer to as the bilateral late participation that allows producers that aren't currently enrolled to enroll in the program. And insured producers can also make claims under agri-insurance, which insures crops against losses due to weather. And as you have heard from the President and Chief Executive Officer from Farm Credit Canada, FCC has reached out to affected clients to offer flexible financing terms to help ease the pressures on cash flows. So in closing, I should mention that during her visit to British Columbia in December of 2021, Deputy Prime Minister Freeland said that agriculture would be eligible for a share of the $5 billion in disaster recovery support outlined in the Fiscal and Economic Update. In December, the Committee of British Columbia and Federal Ministers on Disaster Response and Climate Resilience held their first meeting. They're working together with First Nations to ensure an effective response and recovery, while also enhancing climate adaptation and response measures. So, Mr. Chair, AFC officials and our federal and provincial colleagues will continue to support BC producers during this incredibly difficult time. Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I guess we're now available to respond to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Del Bianco. And just of note for the committee, I know that some may be wondering about officials from the government of British Columbia. An invitation was sent. There was challenges in being able to coordinate the interpretation and an audio test, and unfortunately, they were not able to make the meeting today. I know Mr. McGregor particularly had signaled this along with others. So we'll turn to our questions, 6-minute rounds. I will say that we do have a few folks that are joining us on this committee, Mr. Elbis, Mr. Fast, and Mr. Viss. Welcome. Great to have you here. And I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Viss for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm one of the MPs that represents some of the hardest hit areas. My questions today are going to largely focus on a meeting I had with blueberry producers in the region last week. When I read the DFA website from the federal government, it says that the program aims to bring back people's personal property to pre-disaster condition. But right now, my constituents, when they look at, when they read that statement, they look at it in the context of the agreement with the provincial government in British Columbia, which unfortunately, to my knowledge, the program will provide an 80% compensation on eligible expenses exceeding $1,000 up to a maximum of $300,000. Now, in our region right now, we have some berry producers especially who didn't participate in the agri-stability or agri-insurance programs who have incurred significant losses. What should I be telling these constituents about what programs to access? And I do know you did note that there is a late entry for the agri-stability. That's helpful information. But what steps should they be taking to receive adequate compensation for the losses they've incurred? And that will go to Mr. Del Bianco or the representative from Public Safety. Thank you.
Mr. Del Bianco, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll defer to my colleague with regards to the disaster financial assistance arrangements and the emergency management BC program. But with regards to the programs available jointly through the federal and provincial government related to business risk management. So, Mr. Chair, there is agri-stability, and for those that hadn't enrolled, we've introduced the provision for late participation, and so agri-stability in the case of British Columbia is administered by the province. And so they've informed me this morning that approximately 122 producers have made use of that and have requested to be enrolled in the program. In addition, they can also make requests for interim payments. So traditionally, producers could receive up to 50% of the anticipated payment under the program. We've increased that to 75%. So producers that are in immediate need for support can make requests for interim payments under agri-stability. In addition, producers do have access to Agri-Invest. On average, producers have about 20,000. So it does provide some support in the immediate. But with regards to the longer term, in the case of blueberry producers, so there is insurance coverage in place for the loss of blueberry plants due to excess moisture. So BC again administers the agri-insurance programs. The role of federal government is to ensure that they're actuarially sound, but hopefully a large number of those producers had agriculture insurance that would cover the productive asset.
Thank you, Mr. Del Bianco. Many farmers do not have insurance. That is a reality. What type of support could they receive through the Agri-Recovery program when they're not eligible for some of those additional programs you just referenced? And how much funds are available for through Agri-Recovery for the loss of income, loss of soil damage, loss of agricultural infrastructure?
So Agri-Recovery is a framework. It's not an actual program. So we do an assessment with the provinces to determine what are the extraordinary costs. And then we put in place a program and seek the authorities and the source of funds in order to put the program in place. In the case of Agri-Recovery, it doesn't offset income losses that would be covered through Agri-Stability, but Agri-Recovery can cover those extraordinary costs that producers need to incur to resume their operations.
Where is the Government of Canada and the Government of British Columbia in discussions related to the Agri-Recovery framework and future agreement through the Joint Committee?
So as I mentioned in my remarks, we have a tasks team. We're working very closely with our provincial counterparts to identify all of the extraordinary costs that the producers have incurred, both in the immediate this year and what we anticipate to be the longer term costs into 2022. And so I think there's a commitment to move very quickly and to respond in short order.
Has the provincial government come forward with any initial request or assessment of the damage in British Columbia to date?
Yes, it's a joint task force, so we've essentially done it together, but the province has, given that they are physically located there, been able to provide us with an incredible amount of information to help us both assess the gravity of the situation and the type of support that should be provided.
Thank you, sir, and I really appreciate your appearance today. And I will be going back to farmers in my community, and I hope they can still enter the Agri-Stability Program if they were not previously a part of it. Just one final...
I apologize. I know
Thank
you will
you, sir.
have another
Thank
opportunity, and thank you for the questions. I know this is important to your region and to your constituents. Mr. Turnbull, for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all the panelists for being here today. Appreciate your expertise and all the hard work that you're putting in. You know, it's obviously a heavy heart that we all have for all of the people of British Columbia, and the natural disasters they've experienced last year alone is just unprecedented. I think just in terms of this helping us understand the scale of the impact on the food system and, you know, agri-food supply chain in BC and across Canada, I wonder if Mr. Del Bianco could give us a sense of that scale of impact. I wonder, you know, just how big this and the impact of this natural disaster is in comparison to other ones. Is it unprecedented? Is it larger in size and scale, or are there others that are on a similar scale?
So part of an agri-recovery assessment is to see whether this is a recurring event. And so we did have, there was an event in 2011 called the Canada-British Columbia Excess Moisture Initiative. But relative to that, the scope and magnitude of this is far beyond. We would categorize this as a 1 in a 100-year event. In terms of the specific details, I can maybe turn to my colleague, Scott Pello, in terms of, to give you an impression of the magnitude and the impact it's having on producers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. And as Francesco articulated, it has been characterized as a 1 in 100-year event impacting southwestern British Columbia in regards to flooding and landslides. It has been described as the worst financial agricultural disaster in BC's history. In terms of the regions that are impacted, with the Sumas Prairie region, Abbotsford, Merritt, and Princeton, we know that these are the major agricultural production areas in BC. In regards to the dairy industry, it has been estimated that it is approximately represents 80% of the milk production in the province. With regards to poultry, it represents around 56% of the province's production. And in regards to eggs, it's around 77%. And again, it is a very large area in regards to the cropland that's been impacted, particularly for the horticulture, fruit and vegetable sector. So this is a major agricultural disaster event that we've seen in British Columbia.
Thank you for that detailed answer. And I guess it just highlights the importance of addressing climate change for sure, but also just understanding the full impact must be quite the challenge. So in terms of, and Mr. Del Bianco, in response to Mr. Viss's question, pointed to the framework, agri-recovery, and trying to estimate those extraordinary costs. Could you or any member of your team, Mr. Del Bianco, help us to understand the process of actually estimating those extraordinary costs? Obviously working with the BC government.
Yeah, so there's and it's actually up. There's essentially a formal process when we launch an agri-recovery initiative. First, we need to determine, is it a recurring event and a normal event, and are there extraordinary costs? And obviously, this event has clearly met those requirements. Then we look at, is it a collective experience, significant negative impacts? Are the extraordinary costs significant? And then do producers have a capacity to manage? And so we're in the process of finalizing that assessment and identifying all of the costs related to livestock, perennial crops, farmlands, and obviously environmental concerns. and developing a response in partnership with our colleagues in British Columbia that will administer the program on our behalf. And we will cost share 60-40 the response.
Are there any gaps in that process in terms of getting a full understanding of the cost? Because it sounds pretty thorough to me.
There's essentially, we try and get it right with the BC wildfires and drought, whether it be the drought in the western provinces. We've to date we've been able to respond to producers' needs in a timely manner, and obviously we aim to achieve the same with this initiative.
Thank you for that. In terms of the Federal Provincial Joint Supply Chain Recovery Working Group, which is a very long title for a working group, but what measures has that group either taken or recommended? Mr. Del Bianco, I'll ask you, but if you can pass that off to another member of your team if you want.
I think my colleague Stéphanie Durant may be in a better position to respond to that, given the chair is. Stephanie, would you be able to respond?
Thank you. That particular committee is being led out of Transport Canada. We'd be happy to follow up with additional information if the member wants us to. Happy to reach out to other colleagues. But it is at the early stages of the work, but I would suggest that we could follow up after the meeting.
Mr. Chair, how much time do I have left?
25 seconds.
Okay, just a quick question. In terms of the number of producers or agri-food businesses that have been impacted by this natural disaster, what percentage would you estimate have actually, applied for the different types of support that they need? Any estimate of that?
10 seconds, Mr. Del Bianco.
It's difficult because most producers, with the exception of Supply Managed, have access to their Agri-Invest account, so we can see the withdrawal rates. Agri-Stability, if they're already enrolled, they'll file their request after they file their taxes, and then we're also encouraging producers to enroll that hadn't enrolled in Agri-Stability through late participation.
Thank you, Mr. Delby. I apologize, and perhaps it's something you can table to Mr. Turnbull. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Parent pour 6 minutes. Allez-y.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the witnesses to be with us today for this important meeting. I would like to start in expressing my solidarity for the producers of British Columbia that have been hardly hit by these natural disasters. I'd like to start with Mr. Del Bianco. Mr. Del Bianco, you have mentioned earlier in your preliminary remarks that in Agri-Stability that it was possible to have access to amounts within a few weeks. That was one of the concerns that I had. I mean, of course, we know that sometimes the administrative burden is quite heavy, and very often we've heard from producers that it takes time to actually get the payment of these amounts. Now, in these cases of extreme disasters, maybe you can give us some information on the amounts that producers already had access to, and what is your timeline for them to receive a full support so that they may complete the restructuring and recovery and restart production?
Alors, comme j'avais mentionné,
as I've mentioned, Agri-Stability and other measures with the province, the farmers can ask for interim payments. Usually those payments are 50%, but we've increased it to 75%. 122 of these farmers have asked for it. These payments can come many months later after an event because they have to do their taxes. So they have to file their taxes, and then they have 6 months to give supplemental information. With the measure in place, they can get money within a few weeks. We've talked to our colleagues in BC, and they acted really quickly. There's also Agri-Invest accounts. $60 million are in these accounts in BC. On average, $20,000 per operation. The thing that is most interesting, that interests me the most, the first part of your answer. I'm pleased to see that you've increased these payments to 75%. Are people taking advantage of this measure? What part of producers have received the money? The program is administered by the province in BC, but 122 of these producers, for interim payments, they've confirmed that 46 producers have requested this. There are 46 requests for interim payments and 122 that have done a late request for enrollment. Do we know if anyone needs money but is not eligible for those programs? Maybe you could also answer this question that was asked earlier. Some producers did not have access to agri-stability, but might have been able to have access to it if they weren't in the system previously. Yes, in the agreement with the province, we have a measure for late enrollment. If the province and the federal government remove that requirement, they can register after the deadline. They can now register for agri-stability for 2021, even if they weren't enrolled previously. Thank you. That's very reassuring. You've mentioned that Agri-Invest. During COVID, we've talked about it often with Minister Bidbo and others, and they would say, oh, there's money in Agri-Invest, on average, so much per business. Everyone knows that not all businesses have money. There's an average per producer, but that cannot necessarily help those that are in need right now. Agri-Invest can help in the longer term to adjust variations in income that are fairly small. This is quite big. I'd like to suggest something. Agri-Invest, I feel that you want to help the farmers, and I appreciate what you're telling us. Mr. Parra, sorry, your 6 minutes are done. Thank you very much. We are now moving to Mr. McGregor for 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And as a resident of British Columbia, I just want to thank all of our witnesses for coming before our committee today and providing an overview of how things have gone. Maybe I'll start with Mr. Hoffert and Farm Credit Canada. First of all, I appreciate you, giving producers some leeway with their financial obligations, and it's nice to see that kind of flexibility that you were so quick to put on offer for those who are going through extremely tough times. I guess my question to you, Mr. Hoffert, is, looking at your authorizing federal statute, the Farm Credit Canada Act, and given that, we're probably going to see far more instances of climate-related disasters hitting our agricultural sector, do you feel that the current structure of the Act gives Farm Credit Canada the appropriate amount of latitude to deal with what is going to be coming our way in future years?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. And you know, in response, I would say that within the current statute that we operate within, there are some other responsibilities that can be assigned to Farm Credit Canada through direction of the minister as well. And so from a financing perspective, being able to have sustainable financing, you know, which is something that we'll continue to look to build out from an offer perspective, to be able to create a structure of loans which has got maybe more flexibility to kind of address some of these tail types of circumstances that it seems are we're going to be faced with. I think that's well within our Act. And knowledge perspective, and being able to bring knowledge and advisory is well within our ability to do so. And we've got some other offers, you know, as it relates to a software tool, which I think can be part of some of the tracking and data collection that's going to be necessary on farms. So well within our current statute. So it wouldn't be something that I would say that would hold us back from responding appropriately based on what we would know right now anyway.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you. Excuse me. Maybe I'll turn to Mr. Del Bianco and AAFC. My question is, you know, in looking at business risk management programs, and given the fact that, you know, we will probably be seeing far more climate-related disasters hitting the agricultural sector. Has your department done any kind of forecasting or financial analysis of what our liabilities are in future years, you know, given our agricultural sector? I mean, you just look what happened in British Columbia last year from wildfires and flooding. Other parts of Canada are going to be at risk as well. If you have anything you can provide to the committee about what kind of financial analysis or projection you're doing for what our future liabilities may be associated from climate-related disasters, specifically to the agricultural sector, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada is the only department within the core public service that has a team of actuaries. And so we have our chief actuary is a fellow of the Canadian Actuaries Institute, and they are doing some modeling in terms of the potential impacts of climate change, because the sense is that the events will be both more frequent and the variation will be more extreme. But we don't have any actual translation in terms of how that would play out in terms of increase in the financial impacts at this point in time. But we are looking at, for example, modeling related to agri-insurance, where agri-insurance right now, so the federal government's role is to ensure premiums are actuarially sound so that the premiums we charge producers represent the indemnities paid. And then we and the provinces subsidize the premium rate. But the premium is actually based off historical performance, not on a forecast or the future. So we're starting to look at, is there a potentially better way to estimate what the premium should be based off climate scenarios versus historical performance?
Thank you. And Mr. Del Bianco, does your department play any role in working with other federal departments and with provincial governments in conducting an analysis of how our farm infrastructure is currently equipped to deal with climate disasters? Is anyone conducting a wholesale analysis of, you know, the state of our infrastructure as it relates to agriculture and its ability to withstand some of these major events? I mean, we saw what happened with some of our major transportation corridors that a lot of agricultural goods travel on. We saw problems with dikes in the Fraser Valley, et cetera. If you can provide some feedback on that, please.
I'd say from a From a business risk management perspective, and in particular an agri-recovery initiative, right now, the federal and provincial government, we're focused on the immediate impacts and providing support to producers so they can resume their operations as quickly as possible. But there is the committee that was referenced earlier between the federal and British Columbia government that's working with First Nations.
Mr. Del Bianco, I apologize. We're at 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. McGregor, for your questions. I do want to be mindful of our time. And one apologies on behalf of myself and the clerk. Mr. Del Bianco, I believe, may have to leave at 12:30. I apologize that wasn't articulated, but we do have a great group of folks that can take questions. Mr. Fast, I'm going to go to you. That's my apologies. We're going to go to Mr. Albus. Over to you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members, for having the BC members here today, and also to the witnesses for the work you do. However, I have to say, Mr. Chair, not having the BC government officials here, I think, is a big loss for the committee. And I also, from just the tone of the conversation here today, I think that it's sad that we don't actually have producers here to explain the absolute tragic and heartbreak many have had. Specifically, I've spoken to people that during the wildfires, they would have the BC Wildlife Service, Wildfire Service come in and do what they called controlled burnings while they were away from their homes. And when they got back, they would ask, how do we pay for the damages that have been done to our farms? And they got nowhere, Mr. Chair. And so I was really hoping to have those officials there because other constituents who have been on the record publicly, such as Rhonda McDonald and her husband Wayne, they said that they have been living in limbo and would need around $450,000 to repair the ranch fencing and $300,000 to repair the ranch irrigation system. That's just from the Lytton fire. So my question is to each individual person that is here today. Mr. Del Bianca had said that this is a rare, the worst once in a 100-year event, the worst in agricultural history in British Columbia. Do you feel the current bureaucratic system for supporting farmers in British Columbia works right now, will work for these individuals? Yes or no?
Mr. Del Bianco, I just to intervene, and Mr. Albus, I'll stop your clock. Fair question. I just want to make sure the record reflects that an invitation was sent to the BC government. Unfortunately, that was not able to happen. So I just, for the benefit of those that have worked to try to have them, I want to make sure that's on the record, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Del Bianco. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I should note, I unfortunately do have an appointment that requires me to leave at 1:45 at the very latest, but I think it's important to take your questions. With regards to the business risk management programs, we are working very closely with our provincial counterparts to understand all of the extraordinary costs that producers could incur and to launch a program that would meet their requirements in a very timely fashion. With regards to, I mean, we have very clear, we've got, maybe I can leave it there and take a supplementary question.
I would like just to have all the officials say that they believe whether or not the current system as it stands can deal with the depth of trouble that British Columbia has found itself in. Just a simple yes or no.
Was that directed to any one specific?
Each individual person, witness here, that is representing a program, whether it be a Crown Corporation or the government itself, just say, yes, our system can handle this event in its current form, or no, it can't. I just would like to hear that from officials.
Mr. Del Bianco or anyone that may choose to respond. I know we have Mr. Hofford as well from Farm Credit Canada. Just chime in if you would like.
I can perhaps answer very quickly. It's Stephanie Durand from Public Safety Canada. I think it's very important to recognize how complex disasters are, and the recovery requires close collaboration amongst different levels of government, different departments and agencies. So I think we are also taking an opportunity to learn and to improve how we support disaster recovery. And I'll just maybe just leave it there. Thanks very much.
Okay, well,
Mr. Chair, from Farm Credit Canada's perspective, I could maybe weigh in on the question. I really don't have an answer as it relates to the variety of programming from a disaster recovery perspective. I can confirm that our organization serves only one sector. It's the Canadian agriculture and food industry. And no matter what the status of that sector, whether it's through those good times, which the industry does enjoy often, or challenging times, which is clearly the case for British Columbia, we're not going anywhere. And as long as
thank you. I did ask for a yes or no question, Mr. Chair, and unfortunately, I will tell you the reality for the people back home. Someone described the Similkameen Valley as the Forgotten Valley. Both the Nicola Valley and the Similkameen Valley have been left out. And I will tell you there are major losses here, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to ask for 10 seconds. There are major losses here, and they don't feel the system is working. In fact, Ms. Rhonda McDonald, or Mrs. McDonald, hasn't heard anything from the BC government.
Elbis, we
she
know
applied
this is
in August.
Mr. Elbis, we know this is Mr. Elbis. I would ask that you let me handle this meeting. I know this is a passionate issue. As Mr. Viss has also indicated, it matters, but we do want to be mindful of members' time. I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Taylor.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Just very briefly, will Mr. Pello be staying to be able to answer questions?
Yes, that's correct. Mr. Bianco has a personal appointment. There will still be members of the team to answer questions.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
We're going to go to Ms. Taylor-Roy for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for everyone for being here today, the witnesses who have come to answer our questions. I, like other members, I'm not from British Columbia, I'm from Ontario, but like all Canadians, we have all felt very much the pain and suffering of these farmers and residents in these areas that have been so affected by these extreme climate events, not just the flooding, obviously, but also the fires and the drought throughout Western Canada. So thank you for all you are doing to help. My questions really follow up on some of the questions that Mr. McGregor began. And I'm interested from the FCC, from Mr. Hoffert, to know how many loans are being taken out, what percentage are being taken out for climate adaptation mitigation projects as opposed to other kinds of projects. You mentioned earlier that you felt you had authorization under the current statutes to engage in this kind of lending. And I'm wondering, are farmers availing themselves of this? And are there any kind of special programs to help farmers improve their infrastructure and get ready for these kind of extreme climate events?
Thank you for the question. And I'll probably maybe have my colleague Don Anderson join me on a response. At this stage, I would say a lot of the investment goes into more typical land buildings, technology investment on the operation. Some of that technology can definitely, precision agriculture or areas which will be very applicable to, adjusting practices to meet, expectations for future climate. But I would, and we have programming for, we have a loan program for energy, which and for environmental purposes and stuff. And our uptake has been not as much as I would expect it'll be in the future, and we'll be doing some tuning on those programs to actually improve their applicability. But maybe Don, from your perspective, more boots on the ground, what you're seeing in British Columbia and Alberta in particular.
Well, I think the focus of producers there, it's anything they can do to manage risk in their operations and also maximize returns, for their business. So utilizing things around, energy, lessening demands on energy. We're seeing growth in areas where irrigation is now available, more in play, more so on the Alberta side with the expansion of the irrigation districts there. But if we're looking over into BC, definitely if the water licenses are in place, are utilizing irrigation in that aspect. So, but specifically going in as far as focused efforts right in on, managing impacts of climate change, it really is part of the overall risk management strategy that producers are incorporating overall.
Thank you very much. And just to follow up on that, when you're looking at the loan applications, are you doing any specific kind of risk assessment regarding environmental disaster or the potential for those and the effect they have on the farms, so that the producers and the farmers are considering the long-term costs of some of these extreme climate events, and that you are looking at those when you're approving loans or making suggestions on what those loans are being used for?
I would thank you for the question. For our our risk assessment on any loans in particular, I think it'd be more nearer term and more within the not so much in the tail event side of things. So if you think about interest rate risk, some of the production risk, what are there programs being utilized that have been discussed today from the province and the federal government on the business risk management side of things. I think increasingly in the future, as we get more information on what the different scenarios could be, that could be much more part of our risk assessment. But at this stage, it would be more in line with what you'd expect in terms of just price, production, some of those things from an interest rate perspective, market risks and the sort would be the primarily focus of the assessments at this stage.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And you mentioned it may be in the future. Are there any specific plans? Because as I'm sure you're well aware, the insurance agency, and I was just talking to the Intact Center at the University of Waterloo, where they're doing a lot of assessment on what these different extreme climate events, the impact they will have on the on many insurance risks and also obviously loan risks. And it's just these climate events are here now, and this may be called the 1 in a 100-year event, but it seems like a lot of the 1 in a 100-year events are happening.
Miss Taylor-Roy, I apologize. We're at our 5 minutes, and I want to be respectful of time. So thank you for those questions.
Thank you.
Maintenant, c'est
Monsieur Parent, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if Mr. Del Bianco has left us, but I'd like to speak to Agri-Food and Agriculture Canada in regards to the development of agri-recovery with British Columbia. We spoke earlier. My concern, and I think that Mr. Albas raised something very relevant earlier, is that producers need money now. They need support now, fast support, and those discussions can take time. So I was wondering, do you have a timeline? And beyond anticipated payments that apply more to agri-stability, are you going to be giving interest-free amounts to the people Mr. Albus was talking about earlier? I don't know who can answer this question.
Francisco Del Bianco.
Mr. Chair, I'm still here, but after this answer, unfortunately, I am going to have to leave. But in regards to agri-recovery, I can tell you that we are working closely with our BC colleagues. And of course, it is the minister who is going to make the announcement. But we understand the urgency in order to implement a program without delay, in order to have access to money right away. We had implemented measures with agri-stability where producers could ask for interim payments, and our colleagues in British Columbia are ready to receive those requests and to react as quickly as possible. Furthermore, producers have access to Agri-Invest. So within the risk management programs, those are the measures available currently to support producers. Thank you for your answer. Are we also going to make efforts for next time? Because we know that next time will be less than 100 years away with global warming. I apologize, Mr. Parent. 10 or 15 seconds, Mr. Del Bianco. Agri-Recovery, its goal is to help producers pick up operations as quickly as possible, and a committee will be examining long-term measures.
Mr. Parent, Mr. McGregor for 2.5 minutes.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I guess, probably this question is for Mr. Pello from AAFC, and maybe if Ms. Duran wants to chime in as well. Whenever we're confronted with these types of disasters and we look at the way the federal government enacts its procedures and works with provincial counterparts, there are always learning opportunities. And I guess my question is if we were to have another extreme flooding event this year in some other region of Canada, what lessons could we apply from how we reacted to the one in November in British Columbia? Anything that you would have done differently? Is there room for improvement? Anything that we as policymakers need to look at to make sure that we are being there to the best of our abilities for our hardworking Canadian farmers? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So in regards to the Agri-Recovery process, whenever we do complete an initiative with the province, we do take the time to conduct a lessons learned to see what worked well, what didn't work well with regards to that initiative, and with the idea of looking forward to how we could better respond to those disaster events and how we implemented programming. And so it's a very key thing that we do when we finish these initiatives, is working with the province to identify, again, are there gaps within the current core BRM programs, whether that be particularly agri insurance. Is there ways we can improve the insurance coverage to deal with some of these risks going forward? And so when we do that, we're looking to make sure that the producers have the BRM tools that they need to manage the significant risks that are threatening the viability of their farms. Of course, we try to, if there was another flooding event like this, we try and take those lessons learned as much as possible and be able to react quicker. That being said, as you guys are aware, like each disaster can have its own unique disaster cost, and with respect to the different regions of Canada, and of course the different types of production that are occurring in sometimes localized areas. And so again, we do have to take that time to do the proper assessment with our provincial colleagues and making sure that we have the most complete information when looking at what are those disaster recovery costs that are there, and then again, what is the appropriate program response to help producers be able to take those recovery actions and be able to get back into business as quickly as possible. And so again, we try and
thank you, Mr.
learn from our
Pello.
experiences and apply them going forward.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Mr. Fast for 5 minutes. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
I know well how devastating this event has been for our farmers. I mean, you could talk about the dairy farmers, you can talk about the poultry folks, the chickens, the eggs. We've got the greenhouses, we've got the nurseries, flower growers, and then we've got the blueberry growers and the raspberry growers. Some of these industries are going to recover relatively quickly. Others will not. The blueberry growers will not. So, Mr. Pello, Mr. Del Bianco suggested that the Agri-Recovery program wasn't actually a program, it was a framework that gets triggered for extraordinary events, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is correct. It is a framework that's as part of the Canadian Agricultural Partnership that allows us to work together with provinces to put in place the agri-recovery initiatives to respond to disaster events.
This be an extraordinary event?
Yes, this would be characterized as an extraordinary event.
And Mr. Del Bianco also said it would have to be a collective experience. I assume this would be a collective experience.
And yes, in regards to a collective experience, it is impacting many farmers, again, many sectors. So in terms of the collective experience, it could be characterized as being a collective experience.
Okay. Does the unprecedented heat dome event and the subsequent drought, which again, it's the highest temperature ever recorded in Abbotsford in our recorded history, would that qualify as an extraordinary event and trigger this program?
So in regards to the summer events that led to drought and obviously wildfires within British Columbia, there was an assessment that was done in regards to those disaster events in each province. And again, there is a current active program initiative that's taking place in British Columbia to deal with both drought and the wildfire impacts that have happened.
So this unprecedented series of events that would trigger the framework, I'm assuming triggers a funding request to government. Is that correct? Help me explain the process.
So the Agri-Recovery process starts when a province makes a formal request to Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada to start an assessment. And so once that province has done that, that really initiates the process to create a task team to study the disaster event, and then looking at, again, the criteria that are part of the Agri-Recovery framework to seeing how that disaster event meets those criteria. And then as we complete that assessment, we're exploring the level of the significant impact, the significant costs that are there, and again, exploring what current programs can respond, and then targeting a response.
Sorry, my time is short. Has British Columbia triggered or requested that funding be given?
So it was on November 19th that BC formally put in their request to have an agri-recovery assessment. And so that is what started the process. And we've been working very closely with British Columbia and as well as some of our other federal colleagues in public safety to do the proper assessment in regards to those disaster recovery costs.
And what kinds of losses would be covered? What kinds of losses and what portion of the loss would be covered?
So in regards to the types of extraordinary expenses or costs, Mr. Francesco did provide some of those, but to be more specific, we're looking at lost feed. So the feed that producers may have to purchase in order to feed their animals. Again, the transportation of those animals, whether they need to be taken away from those flood zones and moved to a safer location. There could be the rental of certain facilities to house those animals. Again, livestock safety and health, so veterinary costs that producers have to incur to make sure that their animals are safe and healthy. Again, there's mortality costs, so we know that producers are going to have to replace some of their breeding stock. Again, when we look at the scale of flooding and the amount of damage that's done to the land and soil, there's a lot of land remediation costs that must be undertaken to repair.
Again, since my time is short, I've got maybe 15 seconds. Just wanted to ask, if a farmer is not insured under the agri-risk program, failed to insure or refuse to be insured, do these agri-recovery funding programs, will they supersede that agri-insurance program?
Very quick, Mr. Pello. I want to be mindful of time.
Agri-recovery, again, explores all the support that's available through the BRM programs currently, and then looks to target to the cost that the producer cannot manage, and so and then looks at to fill that remaining gap.
Okay, Mr. Lewis, 5 minutes, over to you.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Epp.
Yes, as a regular member of this committee, could I ask these officials bring back to this committee the questions that were asked earlier about the agri-recovery funding, as well as the accounts with the Agri-Invest? And secondly, given that our Thursday seems to have opened up, would it not be prudent to extend the invitation to the BC Agri-Food officials, and our colleagues could return to ask them their specific questions there?
So look, as it relates to the question of them providing further information, them being the witnesses, I think that is fair game. If you're proposing a motion right now on the floor to do a Thursday study, that's something that ultimately would have to be hashed out in the short time that we have remaining on the floor. It was agreed upon in camera, as I guess I should say, we've laid out in the subcommittee report the elements of where we want to go. If you believe that we need to go in a different direction, that's a conversation we can have. I see Mr. Drouin's hand, so I'd like to recognize him, and perhaps we can continue.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, perhaps what I can suggest to Mr. Epp is that given the fact that Monday we may have the time, and just to give enough time for witnesses, I would suggest that Mr. Epp brings his point at the Monday meeting, and perhaps that would give enough time for the witnesses to appear. As you have noted, that invitation was extended to the BC government. I just don't want for us to go out and then seek out another invitation, and then because of the short notice, they can't make it.
Thank you, Mr. Drouin. Mr. Epp, quickly.
Yeah, if I could clarify, the information I was looking for specifically on Agri-Invest was BC information, specifically back to it. And then if I could ask the unanimous consent of the room, would we all be in agreement in inviting those BC officials back?
So just so I'm clear, Mr. Epp, and I will consult with the clerk, what you're asking for is additional information that would be privy to the British Columbia Department of Agriculture, the officials with the BC government, not information that you're seeking from the witnesses that are before us here today.
It's two things. It's that specific information for BC accounts, as well as then the officials to come back and testify.
See some hands, and I will consult with the clerk, but I see Mr. Parent, so over to you, and Mr. Drouin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the concern that I have is that I don't want to postpone that too much and to delay the other work of the committee. I think that the proposal that we have on the table to reissue the invitation to the officials of BC might be relevant. So I would say let's try for Thursday. Maybe on Thursday we could have 1 hour to hear the officials from BC. I don't know whether my colleague from the Conservative Party will be satisfied with it. Let's try. If we don't have a success, we can discuss it on Monday. But if we can settle it this week, I would say that, we have an emergency situation. It would be relevant to hear the answers if there is a consensus around this question. Thank you.
Parent has suggested that we take an hour on Thursday. That's not unanimous at this point. I see Mr. Drouin's hand, but it's certainly a pathway. So, Mr. Drouin, over to you.
Well, I would just like, I hope this is not the way that we're going to proceed in future. We have just had a meeting to get organized, and already we are putting proposals on the table that were not discussed. So if the members of the committee would like to have a meeting on Thursday, I would like to say that because of the lack of time, the officials from BC might not be here. So again, we don't give them a lot of time to come here and testify. Now, if it's a question that we want to have officials from BC government, let us give them at least a little bit of headway to accept our invitation. Here again, we're last minute for them, so that's the only caution, that I would like to submit to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Drouin. I do think it is reasonable. It's a short time frame, but I'll go to Mr. Viss in terms of his remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to thank all members of the Agriculture Committee for hosting 3 BC MPs who've gone through the worst disasters we've ever seen in our province. And committees serve a purpose to raise important issues. And we heard from witnesses today, once in a 100-year, all of us have constituents who have lost everything. And if this committee can just show some compassion and work with us to get the answers we're seeking, that's all we're looking for today. This has been a great meeting, and I've appreciated all questions from all parties. And I'm just asking that Parliament here uses its authority and power to make sure that farmers and producers who give us the best food we could ever ask for get the chance to have their voices heard, and that we get a review of the programs that are going to make or break it for them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, look, I've had a conversation with the clerk, and here's how I propose we could move, Mr. Epp, trying to take into the account of Mr. Drouin and everything I've heard here today. You're seeking information that from a witness who was not able to make it despite an invitation that was sent for today. Perhaps that we could move forward with a motion to ask for that particular information. If that information does not suffice, recognizing that we have laid out our schedule as a committee, if that information does not suffice the folks on this committee, we could then, of course, provide more notice to British Columbia officials to come and schedule the time frame. It is a challenge to be able to work on that tight time frame for Thursday, but I do think the information you're seeking is important, and perhaps that's a way we can proceed.
Is in order, so I would like to test the room. And obviously, if the BC officials don't want to appear on Thursday or can't, that's something that the subcommittee can take up on Monday, right? But I do think it is important, and I would agree with Mr. Perron's comments, that it is important enough to our colleagues in BC, and that time is of the essence.
So just so we're clear, can you reiterate what exactly the motion is? Because, of course, this is on the fly. There's some members that are home virtually. Can you make it very clear what you're moving right now?
I'm moving two elements. I'm requesting the information specific to the BC accounts on the Agri-Invest program that were articulate or asked for in the questioning, as well as the dynamics or the specifics on the Agri-Recovery program. That's part A. Part B, we're asking that the officials from the BC Agri-Food department appear for an hour on Thursday to answer our colleague from BC's questions.
Colleagues, you've heard Mr. Epp table the motion. Is there any further discussion? I know we've had conversations. Any points? I do see Mr. Albus's hand, and I'll wait for anyone on virtually if there's any further comment.
Yeah, I think most committees, when you have officials and you ask for them to get back to the committee with information, if there's no issue with anyone, I think we would just accept that. I think the real issue is whether or not the committee is going to give its unanimous consent to tasking you as the chair to work with the clerk to bring those witnesses, because quite honestly, we have a big gap in knowledge, and it's not just the numbers that would be brought forward by them, but also what is actually happening on the ground. So I just would ask all members just to think of that. This is just giving unanimous consent for you to invite them to an open spot on Thursday.
Okay, understood. Mr. Turnbull, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So is this just for an hour? Is it for the whole meeting? I certainly am supportive of this, even though I agree with my colleague Mr. Dron's comments about how we had just sort of agreed basically not to have a meeting on Thursday, but that's fine. I think given how this conversation has gone and given the desire to have additional input from the BC officials, I think that's fine. Is it for an hour? Is it for the whole meeting?
I can let Mr. Epp speak to it, but my understanding is that it is for an hour. And of course, colleagues, I'll remind us that we can certainly work with the clerk to send the invitation. The officials from the British Columbia government are not beholden to our timeline, but we can at least extend the invitation and see. I see Ms. Taylor-Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just am wondering, the officials from the BC government were invited to this meeting and were not able to make it. And I'm wondering what specifically it is that we're looking for from them if we are going to re-invite them with short notice for another meeting. I'm sure, as we all know, their priority is working in British Columbia to address the very real and continuing issues that are facing them there, facing the farmers and producers. So I just want to be sure that if we do re-invite them and ask them to come on short notice, that we have some very specific things that we're asking them that have not been able to be answered today.
Mr. Fast, I see your hand. I want to be mindful of our time. I know this is an important conversation. We have some ability to extend, but I don't want to abuse that privilege. So over to you, Mr. Fast.
I'll be short, Chair. The questions we're looking for include things like, has the request to the federal government for extraordinary funding under our Agri-Recovery framework, has that request been made? Has an amount been attached to that? Is it an amount that will yet be determined? Will it be sufficient to address the needs of groups like our blueberry farmers who are desperate to survive right now? So those are the kinds of questions that need to be directed to our provincial officials, and I sense that there is a consensus around the room to allow us to do that.
That certainly gives some parameters, Ms. Taylor-Roy. Look, at the end of the day, if it is of unanimous consent, we can move forward. No guarantee, but we can certainly work in short order to see if it is possible for Thursday. If not, I think to Mr. Albus's point, the committee is certainly well within its right to ask for the information, even if we can't line up a meeting. But we can move forward, assuming that is the will of the committee. Seeing no issues, okay, that is passed. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Unless, Madam Clerk, you have anything else? No. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Okay, all those in favor, thank you. Okay, we will be in touch. Thank you, everyone.